Hey, how you doing? Good. Listen, Geauga County Sheriff's Office. We just want to see if we can talk to you for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. You have any idea what we want to talk to you about? Because I kind of think you might.
Well, my parents said that you were at their house.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think that's about?
It was about a baby.
Yeah. What about?
A baby that was left.
This is the exact moment when the mother realizes that detectives have uncovered her long-held secret. Authorities first got involved in this case in the spring of 1993 when two newspaper carriers stumbled upon the lifeless body of a newborn baby, abandoned and battered on a desolate, snowy country road in Geauga County, Ohio. The crime was so shocking that it would forever change the community. While the community embraced this nameless baby boy as their own, dubbing him Geauga's child, his identity would remain a mystery for the next 26 years. A combination of new technology and old-fashioned police work would lead them to a breakthrough and ultimately to the home of Gail Eastwood Ritchie. Detectives anticipated solving one of the biggest cold cases in the region, but they were in for a few unforeseen surprises. As secrets from the past emerged into the light, the truth was difficult to comprehend. So what truly transpired? And how was this long-standing case ultimately resolved? On the morning of March 25, 1993, Cheryl Jenkins and Wendy Sweeney were out delivering papers along Sidley Road in Thompson Township in Geauga County, Ohio. It was a quiet countryside surrounded by woods, making it an ideal spot to dump something without attracting too much attention. As they cruised by, they initially mistook something on the roadside for a doll. Curiosity piqued, they circled back only to realize it wasn't a doll at all. It was a human baby. The sight sent chills down their spines, and they wasted no time dialing the police.
When I got there, it was obvious that this is a newborn baby that's laying in the middle of the road. It looked like there was a tire track over it, like somebody had driven down the road and actually it over.
The infant boy's tiny body was into a garbage bag. With his arm and leg missing, likely taken by animals, a piece of his umbilical cord was still attached. Cheryl and Wendy were outraged that someone could commit such a horrific act against an innocent baby.
I don't know how anyone could do that. It's awful. Wish we could have found it alive. Just hope they find who did it. I hope they're punished. Because there are a lot of people out there that want babies. They could have gave it up for adoption or something.
Initially, the detectives entertained the grim possibility that the mother of the child might have met a similar fate, prompting them to scour the woods for any additional evidence.
Any clothing, body parts, any kind of evidence that may have been left inadvertently at the scene by whoever left the baby here.
However, their search turned up empty-handed. As the body underwent autopsy, the detectives started wondering if this could have been the work of someone in the baby's own family. Geauga County Sheriff George Red Simmons held a press conference that same day asking for the public's help.
We have determined that the infant was Caucasian, that the infant was less than 6 months old, and that had been in the elements at least 12 hours.
He pleaded for anyone with relevant information to step up and help identify the baby boy. It was a desperate plea to shed light on the heartbreaking case and bring justice to the innocent victim.
The first thing got to me when I looked at it, I said, why? How? We wanted to know, was the child alive? Did it breathe any air, or was it born dead?
The autopsy reports brought forth even more heart-wrenching details. It was determined that the child was between 1 and 3 days old. Using a standard test of floating a lung in water, the coroner concluded that the baby had been born alive. However, despite thorough investigation, they couldn't determine the exact cause of death. It also remained unclear whether the infant was already deceased when abandoned or succumbed to the harsh elements after being left in the cold. The news of the infant's tragic fate gripped the hearts of people across Northeast Ohio. Despite not knowing the child personally, the community was devastated by the suspicion that he'd been abandoned and possibly harmed by his own family. Their sole desire was for justice to be served. Meanwhile, law enforcement tirelessly pursued any lead that could help identify the infant. The Geauga County Sheriff's Office made a heartfelt appeal to the child's mother, offering support and guidance to prevent further harm, but sadly, no one came forward. Deputies went door to door, interviewing residents in the area. Police agencies statewide were contacted to check for any reports of missing infants. Additionally, hospitals were contacted to obtain lists of births in the past 3 months across multiple counties. But the origin of the boy remained a mystery. Additionally, a tip line was established and flyers were distributed in hopes of garnering information. The efforts paid off as numerous calls poured in, including 2 from bus drivers who were called seeing something unusual on their routes the morning the baby was found.
It was hard to determine if it was a stuffed baby doll or like a little stuffed animal.
So I went down in it and I looked and, that's a baby. And I thought, nah, that has to be a baby doll.
However, they couldn't identify it as a human body at the time. Despite these promising leads, investigators were unable to gather concrete evidence. Detectives looked into 34 individuals and issued 24 subpoenas, but ended up hitting a brick wall. Even with all the manpower, tips, and hard work, they couldn't figure out who could abandon a child in such a terrible condition. The identity of the abandoned baby boy remained a mystery, but his death deeply affected the community. They decided to name him Geauga's Child, after the county, to give him a sense of belonging and honor his memory. Months later, in November 1993, the community came together for a funeral at a local church. Around 130 people showed up to pay their respects and say goodbye to the little one who had touched their hearts.
This baby boy suffered at the hands of people who didn't care.
Who love and care for this little child.
Even during the funeral, detectives stayed on their toes, hoping it might stir up some leads. They figured a family member might show up, so they camped out at the church parking lot. There, they secretly recorded people who came to pay their respects. Despite their efforts, this operation yielded no significant breakthroughs. As the church service concluded, 2 members of the sheriff's office solemnly carried the tiny white casket out of the church. The community pitched in, donating money for the burial and tombstone, ensuring the child received a dignified farewell. One side of the grave marker had some touching poetry. It read, "Geauga's child lies here now in safety, just too late to save his life, too late to make things right, but not too late to teach us all to love and cherish life." After being denied a family and life, the baby finally found a home in death. The child was laid to rest, but the case wasn't.
Case is still active. It'll remain active until it is solved.
Wondering if the widespread attention surrounding Geauga's child would kick loose some guilt in the parents, investigators planted a camera at the child's grave, hoping to catch them sneaking back to pay their respects. For months and years, the camera rolled through snowstorms and sunny days alike. Many people left flowers, toys, and homemade clothes at the gravesite, but it never provided any closure. In the years that passed, the investigators tirelessly pursued every lead, leaving no stone unturned. They diligently explored hundreds of potential avenues, including visiting schools to inquire about any undisclosed underage pregnancies, but to no luck. Thomas Dewey, the lead homicide detective tasked with the case, spared no effort in keeping the investigation in the public eye. There was even a time when he felt they were on the brink of solving it. A tip took the authorities all the way to Arizona, chasing down a lead on a man who had once lived near where Geauga's child was discovered.
He had a girlfriend that was pregnant 5 months prior. There's no child afterwards, after this pregnancy. We thought we had it figured out, and then when we got the result.
Despite the hopeful anticipation, this lead ultimately led to another dead end. Although disheartening, the investigators refused to give up hope. Every avenue, no matter how unconventional, was explored. Even suggestions from Nancy Meyer, a psychic investigator, were considered.
Very meek personality. She's no longer with the man that forced her into this. I think her big problem in coming forward is she feels that she would be arrested.
To see if Nancy's insights held any truth, detectives had to bide their time for over 2 decades as the case remained cold. It wasn't until advancements in DNA technology revolutionized the criminal justice system that the situation took a dramatic turn. In 2005, Detective Dewey retired from the sheriff's office. Even though we often visited the gravesite, he had to step away from the investigation. Detective Don Seaman took the reins from there. The real breakthrough in the case arrived in 2018. It was a time when headlines nationwide buzzed with news of forensic genealogy cracking long-standing mysteries, such as the Golden State Killer case. Seaman saw the potential of this innovative technology in identifying Geauga's child.
So I approached our sheriff and the prosecutor with the thought of hopefully trying this new investigative technique.
And his big ask was, he says, listen, I think this is going to cost $5,000 and I'd like you and the sheriff to split it.
We've got another idea, it's worth a try.
You know, what the heck, let's do it. Let's spend the money, let's get the DNA profile, let's see if we get anything out of this.
So in September 2018, the process for submitting the preserved DNA began.
The Geauga County Medical Examiner's Office had kept tooth buds, DNA from those tooth buds from the baby, and that DNA was suitable for comparison.
According to experts, teeth are considered the most reliable source of DNA. Preserving such evidence was ahead of its time. So with this piece of evidence, hopes were high. Additionally, investigators had a vital piece of information from the DNA analysis that could potentially narrow down their search. The baby was determined to be of Middle Eastern descent, possibly Lebanese. However, pinpointing the baby's parents proved to be no easy feat. About a month later, they encountered another setback. The lab they partnered with hit a roadblock. They couldn't locate sufficient close relatives to advance the investigation.
The hits that would come up initially were very distant, like 3rd to 4th generation cousins.
So the Geauga County Sheriff's Department had to delve deeper on its own. They decided to take a bold step and submitted the baby's DNA to GEDmatch, popular among individuals interested in tracing their ancestry. After months of tireless investigation, Detective Seaman and his team painstakingly constructed a family tree comprising over 1,400 individuals to trace the parents of Geauga's child. These individuals hailed from various corners of the globe, spanning different countries. They were identified based on the DNA samples they'd previously voluntarily provided to the online database. In the end, they managed to locate the individual who submitted the closest DNA match found on the site.
We did identify a family member very early on, who without him, we would not be here today.
The lead brought them to a man named Vernon Holden, living in Omaha, Nebraska. Without hesitation, the detectives reached out to him.
Hello?
Hello, is this Mr. Holden?
Yes.
Mr. Holden, my name is Don Seaman.
As it turned out, Vernon, a third-generation cousin match of Geauga's child, had submitted his father-in-law's DNA to the database.
We're all trying to do everything we can, so with your help, hopefully we can get closer to some closure for this.
I can help. I'll try to help.
All right. I really appreciate it.
Vernon volunteered to assist in creating a more comprehensive family tree for his father-in-law, a decision that would prove pivotal in cracking the 26-year-old cold case. However, before this could occur, the investigation needed to progress further with the leads generated from the family tree. Several new potential suspects were interviewed as a result, each bringing the investigation one step closer to uncovering the truth. One particular clue led them back to Sidley Road, where Geauga's child was discovered. An extended family member recalled visiting her uncle and his pregnant girlfriend at that location for Thanksgiving in November 1992. Strangely, the baby was never born, and she never heard anything more about it thereafter.
We got some DNA out of the trash, and he had a girlfriend that was pregnant at the time, no baby, and he was not the father. Another time that we thought we had it figured out, and we just didn't.
Despite the failures, detectives remained patient, confident that with each passing day, they were edging closer to solving the mystery. In early 2019, they finally figured out that Geauga's child was the grandchild of one of 10 siblings, but they hadn't matched the baby to anyone yet. There was only one living sibling, Harvey Eastwood, who lived in Lyndhurst, Ohio, about 30 miles from Geauga County. The tricky part was, he was adopted. Despite the slim chances, detectives decided to pay him a visit.
Yes, sir. Hello, are you Harvey? Yes, I am. Harvey, my name is Don Seaman. I'm a detective with Geauga County Sheriff's Office. Just wanted to see if you'd be willing to talk to us.
Harvey had 2 daughters, neither of whom were from the area. In fact, he didn't even know where Geauga County was. So the detectives didn't think Geauga's child would be linked to him. After chatting with Harvey for about an hour, as they were getting ready to leave, Harvey dropped a bombshell. He mentioned that his children and grandchildren met their spouses at a camp.
Where was that at?
At Camp Koinonia.
What's it called?
Camp Koinonia.
The investigators hadn't heard of Camp Koinonia, so they looked it up. Turns out it was just a mile away from where the baby was found. They asked Harvey if any of his daughters had dated a man of foreign descent.
Your son-in-laws, do they have any foreign descent?
Oh, Mark has Lebanese descendants.
Mark Ritchie was the husband of Harvey's older daughter, Gail. Gail was 49 at the time, happily married, and had 3 grown children of her own. The detectives were left stunned by this revelation. Unsure of how to proceed, they decided to collect DNA samples from Harvey and his wife Nancy. When the results came back a few days later, they received confirmation. Harvey and Nancy were indeed the grandparents of Geauga's child, a baby they never even knew existed. After 26 years, the identity of the parents of Geauga's child was finally uncovered. But the last knot of this tangled web of a murder mystery was yet to be unraveled. The time had come for detectives to pay a visit to Gail at her residence in Euclid, Ohio. And on May 21st, 2019, they finally did.
So we had kind of set up outside her house early in the morning. We saw her husband leave and go to work, Mark. We had set up a hidden camera in a coffee cup so we could record as we approached her.
Gail was in her garage getting ready to leave for work as the investigators approached her.
Yeah? Hey, how you doing? Good. Listen, Geauga County Sheriff's Office. We just want to see if we can talk to you for a couple of minutes.
No, yeah.
Okay. You have any idea what we want to talk to you about? Because I kind of think you might.
Well, my parents said that you were at their house.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think that's about?
It was about a baby.
Yeah. What about?
A baby that was left.
Mm-hmm.
This was finally the moment Geauga County detectives had been waiting for almost 3 decades. Despite their anticipation, they gave Gail the benefit of the doubt, allowing her to share her side of the story.
We don't know what was going on at the time. We don't want to speculate either, okay? So I don't think you want us to speculate. We're not here to arrest you, okay? We are here to take your DNA, okay? And we would like for you to tell us your side of the story, because we'd like to know. As of right now, you're not under arrest. You're not going to be arrested today. But we want to know what was going on. I think after 26 years, it's time.
Although Gail's facial expression suggested she might prefer to avoid the conversation altogether, the detectives reassured her that she was not in trouble. Eventually, she decided to reveal the secret she'd been hiding from the world for a long time. But before delving into the conversation, investigators needed to confirm definitively that Gail was indeed the mother of Geauga's child, despite her own words suggesting as much.
Well, what we'd like to do is get your DNA, okay? And then we would like for you to come back to our sheriff's office so that we can talk. You're not being arrested.
The investigators were taken aback by Gail's calm and composed demeanor. Unlike what they'd expected, she didn't appear scared or shed any tears, which most people would do in such a situation. It was crucial for them to understand how Geauga's child ended up abandoned on the side of the road. Did someone coerce Gail into this action, or was it her own choice? And most importantly, why did it happen? To get all these answers, once DNA swabs were collected, Gail was brought to the Geauga County Sheriff's Office for questioning.
You're not under arrest, okay? And
We would like to get your side of the story, though. Obviously you had indicated that your parents had told you that we had been out, so I'm sure that you kind of knew that this day was coming, that we were going to be coming out to talk to you.
Gail confessed to abandoning the baby and provided more details about the incident. She revealed that in the summer of 1992, at the age of 22, she was living with her parents and younger sister while dating her future husband, Mark Ritchie, who was a few years older than her.
I did not know I was pregnant.
During that summer, she became pregnant with Mark's child, but she didn't realize it until about 3 months before giving birth.
At the time, I still had my menstrual cycles. And then my menstrual cycles ended up stopping.
Okay.
I want to say about 3 months before the baby was actually born.
Okay.
And I honestly do not remember the date or the day when the baby was born. I do know it was in winter.
Despite discovering her pregnancy, Gail chose not to seek help and kept it a secret from everyone, her family, church friends, and even Mark. She mentioned that her weight, which was over 200 pounds, made it easy for her to conceal the pregnancy.
But you hadn't told anybody?
I had not. No one knew.
Gail continued her confession, recalling a day in March 1993 when she was at home in Shaker Heights, where she worked as a full-time nanny. Feeling unwell and alone while waiting for the children to return from school, she suddenly felt the urge to push.
The next thing I knew, I was giving birth to a baby in the toilet.
Confused and overwhelmed, Gail admitted she didn't know what to do, and the only option she saw was to dispose of the baby.
I didn't know what to do. The only thing I could think of was to put the baby in a bag.
After placing the infant in a bag, she cleaned the bathroom to cover her tracks and placed the baby in the trunk of her car. She then went on with the rest of her day, caring for the children before returning home. Several days later, possibly a week, Gail, with the baby still in her trunk, attended a church youth group outing at Camp Koinonia. From there, she drove a few miles to Thompson Township, where she ultimately abandoned the baby.
I got in my car and just drove. I don't know where I ended up. And I just ended up stopping on a road. I don't know which road. And I took the bag out of the trunk. And I laid it in the woods.
Gail couldn't remember how far she'd ventured into the woods to abandon her child.
Was anybody with you in the car?
No. No, I was by myself.
About how far off the road do you remember you went? Like with the bag? Like how far from the roadway you would have went? Or was there anything specific by there?
I remember stopping on the road. There was a lot of snow. I do remember a lot of snow. And I walked in as far as I could and I left the back.
Detectives then confronted her with information from the coroner's report, suggesting that her baby was born alive.
And there had to be some type of screaming or something that you heard or saw.
It seemed evident that Gail may have always intended to abandon the baby.
I mean, did you intend on having the baby, or I mean, what were your intentions? Should have kind of come unexpectedly that day, but it sounds like you had made your mind up that, you weren't in the right spot at the time, you weren't telling anybody, this was kind of what you were planning on doing, for lack of better words.
I suppose.
Perhaps the saddest aspect of this ordeal was that after abandoning her newborn, she never looked back and simply carried on with her life.
Now getting back to, you said you were at this family's house in Shaker Heights when the baby was born, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember their name or where they lived at?
I do.
Okay. What was their name?
I'd rather not.
When questioned about why she didn't confide in anyone, Gail explained that she was afraid.
But because of those circumstances, you didn't know what to do. Was it because you were young, because you weren't married? You're afraid to tell your parents? I understand you're Baptist.
I was definitely afraid to tell my parents. My father was very adamant about not having children before you're married. I was probably afraid that he would leave. I always go to the worst scenario and not the best scenario.
And what was the worst scenario in your mind?
Him leaving.
Investigators were curious about how clueless Mark was, especially given that Gail saw getting rid of the baby as the only way to keep her man. While Gail's interrogation continued at the Geauga County Sheriff's Office, other investigators visited Mark at his home. At that point, he had no inkling of what was happening with his wife.
How you doing, sir? We're detectives with the Geauga County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
We just have to talk to you about some stuff. My other partner and I, we've been, for the last year, like I said, we've been trying to identify this baby in the family. So, obviously, from 1993, we've had DNA. We get DNA, we try it, no good. And eventually, we just ran out of places to go.
They walked him through their investigation and explained how the family tree led them to Gail and Mark.
Today, we met with Gail, and Gail said that our detectives that she's talked to today are the only two she's ever talked to about birthing a child in Shaker Heights, putting it into a garbage bag, and driving it to Geauga County. So
my wife said this?
Mm-hmm. So
that's news to me.
At some point in June of 1992, or roundabouts, you guys got together and had, she got pregnant. And for whatever reason, she kept it from you. And in March of 1993, she gave birth to that baby. And for whatever reason that we're still trying to figure out, she didn't tell anybody, and she left that baby in Geauga County.
Wow. I don't know what to say.
After almost an hour of conversation, convinced of Mark's genuine shock and his lack of involvement in the murder of Geauga's child, detectives departed the house. However, the most significant revelation from Mark was that he was aware of one of Gail's pregnancies. Shockingly, he claimed it occurred before 1993, before Geauga's child was born. Mark revealed that Gail later informed him that she had experienced a miscarriage. This raised questions. Was Gail hiding more secrets? Was Geauga's child not her only abandoned child? While Gail remained under interrogation, it was time for the detectives to be blunt with her. They reminded her that her DNA would be entered into CODIS, the national database for storing and comparing DNA profiles from various sources. This was her final opportunity to come clean about anything she'd kept hidden.
But you know and I know this isn't the only time. That there's more times that this has happened. And now is the time that you need to tell us about those, Gail. How many other times has this happened?
One other time.
One other time? And when was that? Was it before or after this child?
Before.
Before.
Gail's shocking confession made it clear that Geauga's child was not her first victim, but another child had sadly fallen victim to her actions. She revealed that in 1991, at the age of 20, she went into labor in Mark's rental house in Geauga County, Ohio. She abandoned this child in the same manner as she did with her second child.
He gave birth to toilet.
Is it a boy or a girl?
I don't know.
You don't.
And I never.
You didn't want to know?
I never looked.
Okay.
I don't know.
What happened after you gave birth to the child?
I did the same thing. Put it in a garbage bag.
And what did you do with the garbage bag?
I left it.
What do you mean you left it? What does that mean, Gail?
I took it and left it over by medical buildings in Euclid.
Where did you leave it exactly?
There's a road called Brush Road. Goes up behind very tall medical buildings that are there. And I just left it over in the tall grass.
Kind of like a field area you left in the tall grass?
Yeah.
What time of year was this?
Summer. I think it was summer.
Summer, and you think you're 21? Do you remember what year it would have been?
While detectives maintained their professionalism, they were stunned by Gail's apparent disregard for her children, who were cruelly denied the chance at life. For years, she frequented the same area where she abandoned Geauga's child with her other 3 children, seemingly unaffected by her dark past. Gail's confession was crucial for the authorities. If she'd committed the same crime more than once, it suggested a certain level of premeditation rather than a spur-of-the-moment decision as Gail portrayed. Despite this revelation, Gail was allowed to return home for the time being. However, before she left, detectives cautioned her about potential threats to her safety. After 26 years of seeking justice for the abandoned baby, the community now knew who was responsible. And this was not good news for her.
There's been news stories, newspaper articles, a news story that some of the original investigators and they maintain that grave stuff. So this is something that is very big in the community. And with that being said, we are concerned for your welfare.
Gail had been a resident of Euclid for over 20 years and appeared to blend in seamlessly with the community. Many found it difficult to believe that she was capable of such a heinous act. It was a hard pill to swallow for the people who had known her as an excellent wife and mother.
Church-going family, very respectable. She was so nice. I mean, I just can't. I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Meanwhile, detectives tried their best to locate the remains of her first child. It had been almost 3 decades since the incident. Sadly, despite Gail's detailed description of the specific area where she abandoned the baby, no evidence was found. However, Gail's freedom didn't last long, as on June 6, 2019, she was taken into custody and charged with the murder of Geauga's child.
26 years, the Geauga County Sheriff's Office has been working very hard to solve a case of Geauga's baby. Today we announce that the case has been solved. Gail Eastwood Ritchie, age 49, of Euclid, Ohio, was indicted for aggravated murder and murder.
However, she didn't face charges related to the 1991 case due to the lack of physical evidence. Gail pleaded not guilty to the charges, and her trial began on March 31st, 2022. The defense argued that Gail did not murder her child, claiming instead that it was a stillborn baby.
She didn't do anything to purposely cause the death. This was a stillborn baby. And under those circumstances, your verdict can only be not guilty.
They also contended that there wasn't enough evidence for the medical examiner to conclusively determine if the baby had taken a breath.
There's no description, first of all, of where he took these tissue samples from in the lung. Right. Correct. And there's only one lung here, right?
Yes.
So if in a typical or routine situation, you would want tissue slides from both lungs.
Ideally, yes.
And so that's another example of what would be either a vague and or incomplete report.
True.
They even brought up Gail's difficult home life, citing her claim during interrogation that she'd been verbally abused by her father. The defense argued that Gail's decision to abandon the baby stemmed from extreme fear and low self-esteem.
It was a very cold household. They would have family dinners and there'd be very little discussion except for her father ranting that no daughter of mine will ever have a child out of wedlock. That is the Gail Ritchie that you're going to be judging.
The prosecution came in swinging, arguing that Gail wasn't just responsible for her child's death, but she ditched him like a piece of garbage.
Her actions caused the death of this child. But then finally, you have to look at, for an aggravated murder, did the state prove prior calculation and design? What does she do to prepare for the birth? Nothing.
They emphasized that Gail showed zero remorse, only embarrassment throughout the interrogation. She even kept referring to her child as it. They also revealed that Gail had confided to her boss, Colleen Rode, at Noreen Londrigan's School of Dance in Mayfield, where she worked as a receptionist, about being in trouble 2 weeks before her arrest. Although she withheld specific details, this admission lined up with the time when investigators obtained her DNA sample. It showed that she was aware of her guilt and the impending consequences of her actions.
Her husband just met with my mom and I just to give us a heads up that something was might be happening. They didn't go into any details at all.
The trial wrapped up in only 4 days, concluding on April 4th, 2022. After just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict, finding 51-year-old Gail Eastwood Ritchie guilty of murder. More than a month later, on May 24th, 2022, she received a life sentence with a possibility of parole after 15 years. Before she was sent off, the judge delivered some stern words to her.
Unable to face and address your own problems and the unwanted consequences your pregnancy might cause, in my opinion, you took the easy way out. You coldly and efficiently eliminated your problem by disposing of the only one who couldn't defend himself. He couldn't yell at you or berate you like you feared your father would. He couldn't leave you or break your heart like your boyfriend might. So I truly struggle to accept the explanation that you were young and afraid and alone. Maybe the first time those factors might explain your conduct, but not the second time. I believe you knew exactly how you could solve your problem with an unwanted pregnancy when Geauga's child came along because you had done it before. Calling you a monster who deserves life imprisonment might not be an unfair exaggeration. What I know is this: your wrongful efforts to conceal what happened in February 1993 did buy you 29 years of normal life where you got the chance to get married, raise children, and do some good works. But ultimately you gained that time on the back of a helpless infant whose body you concealed in the woods. Ironically, Geauga's child did more for you than you ever did for him, probably.
In the end, even though Geauga's child finally received justice, the wounds in the community will never fully heal. It's hard for them to wrap their heads around the idea that a mother could commit such an act and then go on living a normal life as if nothing happened. Cheryl Jenkins, one of the women who found the baby, expressed how the traumatic event has haunted her throughout her life.
I always think about him. I've never forgot that day. I mean, it's burned in my memory. Every step of that day. Dropped that kid on a doorstep, him on a doorstep, or done something with him, taken him to a church. For me, it stayed with me all my life, and Wendy, it stayed with her all of her life because she couldn't have children.
However, amidst the pain, there's also a different side to this story. One where the community showed the child love and care, something he never received from his own flesh and blood. This case is truly heartbreaking and raises difficult questions about accountability and responsibility. What are your thoughts on this matter? Do you believe Gail was genuinely helpless, leading her to make such a desperate decision? Or do you think she simply opted for the easy way out, fully conscious of the consequences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to share your suggestions in the comment section below. For more captivating true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe to our channel.